Next up, we want to talk to 4 hardware manufacturers, and I think looking back at the 24 hours that we just had and all the presentations on this stage, it's quite clear that when you build hardware, you have to make important decisions, how to differentiate, how to build solutions that fit all these highly differentiated regional markets, whether to expand into software or not, how to provide the right after-sales service offers. So there's lots of movement in this field, and that's what we want to talk about in the next hour. So I'm very excited. I want to point out now that we'll have a Q&A at the end. So please send your questions either through the event app or raise your hand and just engage live in the discussion. We have mics all in the room. So keep that in mind. I'll remind you later on, just before we finish, that we have a little bit of time for Q&A. So the session's title is Building a Global Framework for EV Charging, Aligning Markets, Business Cases and Impact. And I'm very happy to have 4 amazing speakers on stage. We have Jussi Vanhanen, Chief Marketing Officer of Kempower, with a strong support team here in the front. We have Andreas Müller, SVP Public Charging from ABB. We have Markus Mildner, CEO of Siemens eMobility. And finally, Arcady Sosinov, the CEO of Tritium. So, welcome on stage. Maybe you take the seat underneath your name, that helps everybody.
Okay, got it.
So, how are you feeling? How was last night?
Good, excellent.
It was a really beautiful scene. We already talked about it out there. And I hope, Arcady, the jet lag is not hitting too badly.
Oh, this helps.
You also have nice sunlight coming in this amazing venue. So I would like to start by having a look sort of at the industry. What's it like today to build hardware, charging hardware? And this is because in our call that we had, and we had several, I heard very different descriptions of what the current state of the industry is like. Jussi said, the cake's big enough, we have lots to do, and everybody needs to collaborate, and sort of very positive outlook. And Arcady, from you, I got a bit of a more critical view on the state of things. You said, well, you know, it's tough times, and who knows where we're going to be in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years' time. So maybe to start off, let's get a sort of quick overview from each of you, what you feel like today, also after 1.5 days of ICNC. Do you want to start?
Yeah, thank you. Exciting to be here. It's a great venue. Thanks for coming. I think we are going as an industry towards the early maturity. That we are still very in the beginning. We are finding the ways to work and establish the value chains. But we are getting towards the volume business to get that mass benefit of manufacturing and so on. And then we see that the charging hardware, they start to look a little bit similar. Seems that everybody likes the spring systems that we have been bringing to the market and so on. So that is not anymore the differentiator, but it's the complete package of how we create the user experience with the software and the whole layout of the sites. That's kind of like in a short.
A very good point. I just wonder about our technical colleagues. I think there's a little bit of background, and I see nodding. So, yeah.
Maybe it's my beer.
I think it actually is. So we get some help.
Every time.
Great.
Yep.
I hope everybody. Yeah. Nice. Please give us feedback if the audio is bad. So differentiator into services and software. That's what you that's was
what I mean.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, I can only agree to what Jussi said, and I think being differentiating with software and services actually means taking the total cost of ownership much more into the center of the discussion. Because if you are delivering a piece of hardware simplified, that's very important. That needs to be reliable, needs to do the job in a very segment-specific application potentially. But it will not drive the business case of our customers if you do not look at the total cost of ownership. And if you then look at the total cost of ownership, you have energy management, you have asset management excellence, you have digital tools. And I think this is now really where, as a manufacturer, we see, looking back over our shoulders, very long history with ABB, a lot of charges, we had ups and downs. And we were actually the last 2 years bringing the platform to a level where we can actually scale this platform as a reliable hardware, but we can actually deliver the services on top. And I fully agree that this is probably a big difference between the first years. It was a bit land grabbing. You put chargers. Sometimes the operators were not even aware about their status of the chargers in a proper way. And that's really changing, and that's now going to the second phase of managed assets much more than a piece of hardware.
Yeah, Hotel said earlier, zero downtime, that's their sort of headline, so I guess that's going in the same direction.
Yeah, look, I mean, I want to put it a little bit broader.
Please.
You said we're probably in the second phase of the charging industry, probably in the third phase after that early installations that immense growth for a certain time, and now we're looking on growth rates which are a little bit more consolidating. Also the market is consolidating, and we have to figure out, and that's not only on the hardware side where business models including software and service etc. will bring us some differentiation, but we have to figure out in a way how we're making the whole industry profitable. And I'm talking the whole value chain from the e-car manufacturers who are still saying, well, look, our e-cars are probably the least profitable in our portfolio, towards the CPOs, operators, but also the manufacturers and the software companies. And that profit pool, I think as an industry, we still have not figured out, or it's not big enough at the moment. And the growth is going away. So by that also the markets are not so attractive anymore for investments like they have been probably in the past. And that's now the point where we're at the tipping point that we as players here, hardware players, but also the rest of the industry, we have to figure out how we're making that business model end-to-end profitable, so that everybody who's participating, might it be our customers or direct customers, but also the car OEMs, that we create something which is sustainable for the future as a business model.
Seems like a very responsible sort of claim to say we have to make the entire value chain.
Responsible, no, because we all want to participate also in the future and want to be successful in that market. And it's not only of being responsible in that market, but to figure out how we're making that a business for everybody.
For everybody who's coming downstream. Arcady.
I'll build on that. The profit pool is not big enough, and there are too many market participants, which means that nobody's profitable. I mean, ultimately, I'll describe this industry in two different ways. One, we are in a classic technology boom and bust cycle. The boom happened due to market distortions. We had public funding that hit this industry. In the US, it was NEVI. In Europe, there are still programs available. But that was a market distortion that created a huge boom in this industry. And you had market participants rush in to try to take advantage of the dollars that were available. Then the classic bust. That always happens in these technology growth cycles. You don't go down to zero, but you become a much smaller market category than you were during that boom time. And then there's a reversion to the mean. The problem today, though, with the reversion to the mean is that, again, there are too many market participants and there's not enough profit to go around, which means that a lot of the companies, both in this sector and in this room, are unprofitable. And I just talked to Markus about this. It is very difficult on the hardware manufacturers if our customers are not making money, our customers being the charge point operators. We'll talk about fleets separately, and they're a little bit different. But if the charge point operators are not making money, how can we? And so I see a real issue in this industry. Tritium was one of the companies that in the early days was impacted very, very in a big way, in a very spectacular headline. We went chasing the money in the US, the NEVI funding, and we got bitten. We got bitten hard. Now we're back and we're rebuilding customers' trust, but I can tell you from experience that these public dollars cause massive market distortions that we do not need and that are not healthy for this industry.
And probably, if I may build on that, I mean, these public money and funding is always a good point when you start something, when something is building up. The risk with that is always if you take it away at a certain point of time, then you get that distortion. And investments are based on, well, when Tritium did their investment probably in the US was based on an outlook which is not for the next year, which is for the next 5 years.
That's right.
So if you take the money then away, you have overcapacities and you have stranded assets. And that just comes then at the end with the consequences you live through, right?
Absolutely, and I think that makes actually then the breadth of a big player sometimes a bit easier. We have maybe a better way to deal with such ups and downs, and we for instance try to use this a bit more conservative period on the market as a way to rebuild and reinvent ourselves as well. But I truly believe that we are also suffering from some of the mistakes that were made in the early times. And if we do things right, there is actually a way to make with the current demand on the market, with the current utilization rates we see in some of the markets, you can actually profitably operate a network. So some sectors are maybe suffering a lot, logistics in the US or so, things are changing a lot, but I still see that there is a profit pool of some CPOs around.
I just want to get a feeling for the audience. So who shares this view of Arcady that sort of it's very tough times and the profit pool is not big enough? Can I get a show of hands? Very little. You can dare. Okay, few dare to share.
Oh, they're more optimistic.
Yeah, they are all more optimistic. So you talked about the markets and how some or many were very distorted, and it made it hard because then you have this sort of gap, or you have to prepare. You make a 5-year plan, but you have to think beyond year one. That brings us to the question of which markets are attractive and how do you achieve sort of the scalability across different markets that have different requirements to become a global player. And how do you decide sort of which are the interesting markets? Who wants to start?
Well,
please go.
I can start that. We more look at from the customer-centric way, not looking from the market, but which customers we are working with.
Yes.
And, helping them to create their business rather than to geographical coverage and that kind of. So it's kind of like the same thing from the different point of views of kind of like, maybe you want to continue.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what I think we are strongly working on is on the technology side, which is an important enabler of scalability, that our products or platforms are extremely modular. So, for instance, user experience and power domains, we call it, we have separated, we have almost like 2 sub-products and we can combine them in different ways. So then we have different needs in different markets. We can adapt actually to it without breaking the products too much. On the other side, I think it's the operational flexibility. So now with the tax or with the import taxes, for instance, is an interesting topic. At some point you might want to serve Canada. You need to shave next time. We might serve Canada from Europe because it's more expensive to export from the US to Canada, and then you already have a certain footprint, you can actually leverage this. So we also try to play with this. We have an R&D center in China, we can tap into this. So I think the operational scale and the technology platformization, I think, are 2 key enablers for us. And then I think it's a very good point Jussi made. It's at the end the customer decides where they want to go into, and we will follow the money a bit. I mean, it's not that we try to build a market and attract customers.
But nevertheless, I believe that even if you go for your customer segment and it's distributed all across the world, you have different requirements for standardization, certification. We talked about this famous German Eichrecht. You still have that's not just an operational question. You have to be very adaptive here fit your hardware to the requirements of the market.
Yeah, absolutely. That can be tough. And I mean, then CCS 1 to next transition, I think is a good example. I mean, if your home market, you wanted to bet on this, and then you're hit by this change.
Yeah.
Suddenly, technology are a bit different. That you could have served CCS with an air-cooled cable. Now, next you need to serve with a liquid-cooled. You need to really fundamentally rechange your product portfolio potentially. But I think overall, yeah, with some degree of uncertainty, we can always deal and should be able to live. So.
Yeah, look, I mean, being part of Siemens, and Siemens is like ABB, a global player. So, well, we started off probably in the core markets in Europe, then US, and expanded then a little bit worldwide. But we also experienced that apart from the main standards like IEC, UL, and what we have to follow, what is based on that one, that creates a lot of complexity if you are too broad in the world. So we're now much more focused in Europe, India, and US, and left a lot of other countries for the time being beside, because when we talk about standards and rules and regulations, I mean there are things like Eichrechtskonformität also in other countries in a different look, but they're always specifics, and you're trying to build a platform because we all have to scale. That's for sure. Otherwise, we cannot be profitable. But then, if the specific gets too complex by too many markets, that's where things we're getting a little bit back or staying a little bit back and saying probably it's not global. It's focused markets, core markets where we're active at the moment. The other thing I want to add, and that's also when we talk about norms and regulations. I mean, we're as a market, or especially if you supply hardware, we're not only affected by our own norms and regulations. They're coming regulations from the finance sector when we talk about, for example, that European Accessibility Act, which is affecting all of us, and all of these little twisters and things. Like a few years ago, it was the pin pad, which has to be on every charger. There's a lot of effort and a lot of diversity in your production, your development, and it's not helping the industry. So it's not only the norms we're having, we're all supporting because we're trying to drive them, but there are norms also coming on standards from finance industry, communication industry, etc., which are affecting us. And that's in all the countries also a little bit different, and that complexity is actually hurting when you want to scale.
Let's hear Arcady.
So your question was on markets, but we also started talking about norms. So I'll start with the markets. The markets that we find most attractive right now, in the classic geographies, the US and in Europe. In the US, it's going to be last mile delivery fleets. I think are a very attractive segment because A, they don't need to make money, and they do have they have a strategic imperative to move towards electrification of transportation right now, and they can see actual realizable cost savings on their vehicles, which means they need to install charging infrastructure. In the US, in the Europe, similarly, it's going to be HGVs, large trucks, which again have that strategic imperative. Now, in terms of geographical markets that I find interesting, I want to make sure that we avoid some of the kind of the stars out there, the bright, shiny stars. So, for example, there's a lot of talk about the Middle East becoming the next market, right? And listen, we've seen that play out, right? Tritium has seen that play out in the US. Ultimately, what you need to do is you need to scratch beneath the surface and find out who's actually driving electric vehicles. Are people in the Middle East driving electric vehicles? They're not, right? And so there's investment possibilities by putting charging infrastructure in the Middle East, but that's not going to create a market in and of itself. Okay? Where I do see some of that actually forming is right now in the Balkans. When you look at countries like Serbia, Croatia, Slovenia, Romania, there seems to be a lot of growth there, fundamentally not because there's a lot of public dollars going into the sector, but because there's actually consumer demand for electric vehicles, and people find that to be the right vehicle for their use cases. And so that's a driver for me, where I start looking. Now, when we talk about norms, right, we started talking, the elephant in the room is Eichrecht, and I'm butchering that name, so I'm just going to call it the German metering law. And that's the elephant in the room. And listen, I am okay with norms and standards when a governmental agency sets them and makes it clear and gives you a timeline to conform. In the US, that's happening with something called CTEP and NTEP, which is broadly similar to the German metering law, but you have time to implement that. The German authorities came in and did one of the most shameful things I've ever seen in this industry. If you're in here, we can talk about it, which is that they made it retroactive on existing infrastructure. Now, you're looking at an industry which was already struggling from certain issues, one of those being reliability issues, one of those being scaling issues, another being potential profitability issues, and you go and enact a rule retroactive on all the infrastructure in the ground. That's not something I would have recommended if I was part of that group, but I do think it is absolutely disgraceful for that to have happened. And now CPOs, who's responsible for that cost? Is it the CPO? Is it the hardware manufacturer? Is it someone else in the ecosystem? Should it be the government themselves if they want this so bad? And that's a problem that I think still has not been resolved today and is still plaguing the industry.
In particular, early companies, I mean, that's it's even for the pioneer companies was more difficult because you have that burden of installed base to take care of. Yeah.
And there's one topic, I mean, where we all, as we're sitting here as an industry, but also as the broader charging community, is still lacking influence is actually to drive these norms more proactive. Because, I mean, we have Charge Up and we have other initiatives where we're trying to influence certain norms and standards, but our voice is still not, doesn't have that weight to really drive norms in a way we need them as an industry, and that things like that do not happen like what was described.
Jussi, you had a...
Yeah, comments about the norms and so on, that what the governments are targeting with those. And Kempower has the luxury that we were not the first comer to the market. We were looking already what you guys have been doing. We were analyzing the charging sites, and then we were looking how to make them better and how to avoid the pitfalls that have been there. So the number one was the reliability, and then the user friendliness and user experience. So then we can take the norms so that like an accessibility standard, which I absolutely love, because if I think that we can fulfill the accessibility standards, then it makes the chargers easier to use. And then the cables are lighter and that kind of. So it's more accessible and then more user-friendly. So that's what the governments are doing. That they try to push us better, because we have been a little bit not being very honest when we have been bringing the first generation chargers. But that's the only comment. Same thing about the IRE and all these that it was needed to bring that accuracy for the current measurements and so on, that to be reliable towards the consumers. We came to the market a little bit later, so we had that from the beginning almost. That we didn't have that upgrade burden in our hands. What Arcady was doing, saying.
Do the others share the view on the accessibility standards, that it was sort of a positive regulatory move?
Yeah, I think they're all coming with the right intentions, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we are consumers. We want to know what we're getting when we are charging. We want to be able to serve these products. We also want to be having an infrastructure that works with the grid, so you need to have maybe reactive power control. That's maybe a very good intention. I think it's what is meant is a bit more about how we bring these norms into the market.
Yeah.
And you cannot penalize the early movers. You cannot penalize the already struggling ecosystem. So we have also uncertainty. Reactive power compensation with this VDE norm here in Germany is on since a long time. And there are some utilities that care, and you don't get a permit, and there are others they don't care, but it's the same framework. So this uncertainty and the unplannability is really what is painful. So
it shows that we are very early stage as a business, and accessibility standard, having every country have their own, and we don't have that harmonized standards. That's our problem now.
Yeah. The US is again different. And
one
one is emphasizing the gun weight a bit more. The other one is I need to then put maybe the terminal very low. That's where I don't fully agree. Sometimes these accessibility standards are making it for the average user a bit less uncomfortable or less comfortable as well. But in tendency, I fully agree that we need to converge.
Yeah, I mean, I agree on the part of, yes, it should be accessibility is a good thing. So everything which makes the charging session more comfortable and more accessible for everybody, that's a good thing without any doubt. But there are twists and tweaks in there where I disagree. So
Yes.
how it is being implemented, or if I go one step back on that discussion which was on pin pads.
Yeah.
I mean, pin pad is a thing from the last century.
Yeah.
We're talking about plug and charge. We're talking about apps we're using for that. We're not talking about putting numbers in to authorize a session anymore. So there are things in there where I would say probably might have the right intention, but come to a totally wrong point of time, are outdated sometimes, or are not implemented in the right way.
Why is it that the industry is sort of not part of the discussion yet enough to also shape it? It sounded like you said earlier, we're not organized well enough yet. I mean, you're not that young anymore, and we have, other initiatives that represent CPOs, EMPs, sort of the broader ecosystem. And it seems like, some of they need your knowledge, right, to make good regulation.
We are in there making the regulations, but that you see also in the subsidy systems and that kind of what comes. It is very close to regulation. That it's not we don't ask large enough amount of companies. So it's very sensitive that if some companies is good at lobbying, it will lobby the regulations to their directions and playing others out, and that's bad for the business. That we don't look at the broaden view and asking the comments from everybody that is this the right thing. So maybe that just shows that we are very early as an industry.
And I would also say, adding to this, it was mentioned before that some of these norms come from other industries. I mean, cybersecurity is not going to be defined for e-mobility. You're either classified in or out of a certain framework, and then you have to comply. And I think nobody would want to say that this is not an important topic. So there are a couple of things that are rightfully so imposed on us. We need to make sure as an industry we move towards it.
Hard.
Then when we have the standards like MCS or so, then obviously we have our frictions and battles, and we need to work it out in the forums that are existing.
Thanks for bringing the cybersecurity up, because it worries many countries and governments is that we are putting a very high energy systems there, critical infrastructure, and then without very good regulation towards the cybersecurity. And we have seen the news, especially coming from the Asian market, the competitors like that it's a scary scenario what can happen to the infrastructure here in Europe and USA.
We had it also yesterday, and it seemed like it's sort of a topic that is slowly emerging. So maybe we see it next year at ICNC.
Let's do that.
Detail. But we need some experts, because currently everybody's like, yes, it's important, but I know nothing about it. So.
Well, these are governmental organizations making these decisions in a vacuum, and different governments making different decisions. And none of us are scaled up globally to the point yet where we can influence many of these decisions, right?
Yeah.
It takes a large workforce and body of people, policy people and governmental affairs people, to be able to influence these lobbyists. And we're not at that point in the industry where we can afford to have these massive teams, people in Washington, people in Brussels, to do that. So
I do feel you need a more of a sort of collaborative initiative here.
Absolutely.
Feels a bit like.
I mean, yesterday was a panel, and there was somebody from the VDA, that organization of the German automotive industry. And if you take that one, and which has a big weight in at least in Germany, but also in Brussels, and these are associations we have also somehow to align with.
Yes.
At the moment, we cannot go against them. It's probably a conflict we will not be successful in. So we have to be aligned with them. What are our targets? Is it still that some alternative combustion engines for a certain point of time or not? But we have to align somehow with them. Otherwise, I guess it will be hard for industry to be successful.
Yeah. No, I completely get that. So maybe moving on from regulation and standards a little bit more into the products. So what are very important drivers for your product portfolio right now? And it can be hardware, but it can also be software.
I think there's only one driver. One single driver that matters, and it's reliability. I think all the other technical features, which are great, some of us have features around scalability, some of us have features around power, some of us have features around accessibility, some of it around compatibility with different types of vehicles and makes and models, and that's great. And we all have the little differentiators here and there, and we can talk about them. But ultimately, what our customers want is reliability. They want uptime because that drives cost savings or dollars of revenue. And that is the one thing that we can all go to our customers and say, we're going to help you drive profitability up in your industry. And unfortunately, reliability for many years was a problem for the industry. It was a problem.
Just a quick one. From your point of view, is it a hardware or a software topic?
It's everything.
Okay.
I think this is what's misunderstood in this industry, is that hardware does have its faults.
Yeah.
Parts break. You now have consumers expected to pick up the handle of a 400 kilowatt product and plug it into a vehicle, and you expect that to work every single time, and it doesn't, right? So there is a element of bringing what was once utility infrastructure into the consumer's hands and expect it to work. Not
working.
Yes. So there are hardware issues. There are software issues. There are issues with payment terminals. There's issues with interoperability with the vehicle, right? There's issues with CPOs not doing preventive maintenance. Again, back to my earlier comment of a lot of players, market entrants, jumping in to capture dollars quickly. There were a lot that just didn't understand what it takes to be a good CPO and how to work very closely with a hardware vendor. And I have seen CPOs, and this is particularly true in the US, probably less so in Europe, but in the US, CPOs who just buy the cheapest possible piece of hardware that they can, and now they have a mix of 7 or 8 different hardware vendors in their network, and guess what? That's just not going to lead to good results. Because you need to be deeply, deeply integrated technically with your vendors in order to make sure it works over 10 years.
Working system.
Yeah. I think a different point of view, Arcady, that it's the user experience. Reliability is one item there, that if the charger works or not, it's one subcategory of user experience. But we need to, that's where we're aiming, that it needs to be so easy that you don't need to think about it. That our brothers and sisters and mothers, they become EV drivers, so make it easy for them. And many hardware makers, they try to teach the sequences that first you plug and then you pay, and that kind of that our processes to the EV drivers, we need to make it easy and seamless for them. That's one of the things that you don't want to think about when you come to the charger. You are in a phone and doing other things, and kind of making the charger flexible with your normal life. That it's kind of you can follow your charging status when you're drinking coffee, and
you can just do it habitual.
That it's a habit, and you plug it in and you kind of blend it into your normal life.
Yeah,
you're right. Reliability is very important factor. And but I think it's one very important part of the user experience.
Might be that that's also addressing sort of different customer segments. Well, you talked earlier about the fleet. And obviously, for a fleet case, that's very important. And you were now mentioning the brothers and sisters and sort of...
Yeah. It's the same thing in the fleets. They're just people plugging in the cables, and so no different.
It's maybe sometimes even an average bus driver also doesn't want to think about it when he comes back from the shift and wants to go home.
They're tired.
He doesn't want to plug in twice because the first one wake up did not work or something like this.
But isn't that reliability in the end again?
I mean, I was also thinking...
You can summarize everything.
Do I agree or not? User experience, reliability, yes, they're all contributing to the successful experience you have at the end.
Yeah.
And they are contributing to the commercial success, was also mentioned before, of the operator. Because at the end, I mean, every problem that an operator has throughout the lifetime is a hit on the profitability.
Yeah.
And if we can avoid this, and people are coming back if the user experience is positive, people are using the chargers more often, you have less service cost. I mean, these are all benefits, but I think indeed there are many contributors to this core values maybe that we need to go for.
Yeah.
And they are quite different approaches to this, I would say. Yeah.
What we have to do is, I mean, and that comes all together, and that is kind of looking on that total cost of ownership of our customers, which includes kind of uptime, which includes kind of serviceability, and how we're can access the charger if something is not working out, and then with that having a downtime reduced to a minimum. So that's I guess our task, that we're optimizing that for our customers. It's the same in a depot like in a public charging.
Fully agree. Because also, for instance, in a depot now, energy cost is for instance a very important cost driver. So how can we reduce energy cost? You cannot do that with user experience or reliability. You need to have efficient power electronics. You need to have solutions and software that help you to bring the power where it's needed, but you do not have more than you need. So there are all these tools to actually make the business case work out. That really go beyond reliability as well. Yeah.
Jussi, you wanted to add something?
I forget my point.
Okay, great.
We're talking so long time.
Yeah, sorry about this.
Arcady, do you want to add something?
I think it's just much more simple than that. I think the answer to, again, our customers, unfortunately, are not drivers.
Yeah.
Right? Our customers are the CPOs. Okay? So let's just be very real about who we're selling our infrastructure to. We're not selling our infrastructure to EV drivers. Now, I am an EV driver myself, so I love when things are accessible. But ultimately, the CPO, the first question they ask is, how reliable is your hardware?
Yeah.
And specifically, how often are your power modules going to break? And when they do, how fast can I get another one? Okay? That's the question that's being asked in the very first meeting with every single customer that we walk into a room with. Right?
I think this is an important part of discussion, but I cannot agree that this is so concentrated, because our customers, the success of the people selecting hardware is driven by, for instance, the rating of their app on the portal. The feedback of the end consumer is much more nowadays than 5 years ago a driver of decisions. So I think there are these metrics. They are measured on plugin success rate. They're measured on session success rate. It's not just availability. It's like we sometimes have fantastic availability, but if the sessions, the authorization doesn't work, this is like unreliable as well to some extent, and that's what worries our customers more and more. So.
Okay. You mentioned the profitability of our customers. So then. The number 2 criteria for us is to drive the utilization of the hardware up. So that's the way the CPOs and our customers earn money. We see that the utilization is too low, and then once they get to break even, it's so easy when you drive the utilization. Then how you use the CapEx. That's why the kind of this user experience. It's when you make that good, it's attracting customers. You give enough plugs and power for them, and they will come. And then looking the ways from the hardware, that how you utilize the power electronics for all the plugs the most efficient way, for the distributed dynamic power sharing and that kind of features that we all bringing now to the market.
So I'm wondering specifically about two developments. So one is sort of growing more into software platform after sales services. How important is that? And then the other aspect, I think I'm putting it together just looking at the time, is truck charging. So how important is also technological innovation, like hardware innovation, like scaling capacities and stuff? So maybe you could comment on that. So software and truck charging, I know I'm mixing it a little bit, but it's just, I want to cover both.
Software is a fundamental.
Yes.
And then with that you create those experiences, and then again truck charging is another use case. And then how to again drive the utilization of the hardware up, even in the truck charging, where the trucks that you need to invest on the infrastructure
yes.
without the trucks. So how to drive the utilization up? It's the multimodality that you charge other
vehicles
with the same hardware at the same time while we wait.
While you wait for the trucks to arrive in the coming
yeah.
years.
Yeah, but I think this is, for instance, a very interesting challenge now, responding more to the truck charging. We are convinced that not too far down the road, when more megawatt charging trucks are on the road, you actually want to avoid that you have this mix, because a CCS truck charging on an MCS location is going to cost you a lot of money, opportunity cost-wise.
Yeah.
But I agree. I mean, it's now you're waiting for this handful of trucks being in the area to show up. I mean, this is also not working, and the equipment is not the cheapest. So, how to overcome that early adopter cycle is going to be interesting. But only if, as an MCS truck, you can very reliably know that there will be an MCS plug and you will get that power, and you're not sharing it with 3 others by coincidence, then it will not work, the business case. And it's such a low margin business in the logistics that if they have to wait a half an hour longer than expected, it's a huge
breaking
problem.
They're not going to wait.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this is a super tricky question. How do we get started? But we build it fit for purpose when it's scaled, because you cannot reinvest in 3 years down the road in another hardware that then does the 1.2 megawatt continuously like 5 times in a row or so,
you have to.
Today you don't have to build for that, but you should better keep that in mind, because otherwise it will be a lost sunk cost very soon.
Well, I guess, I mean, on truck charging, as we're sitting here, hardware-wise, powering up, that's a topic which is more or less solved. Or in the way to be solved or to be installed already. The point will be how you're doing that use case, and the use case is clearly, I mean, truck driver has his certain pausing times, and that's the time when he has to charge. Otherwise, the business of our customer there is not profitable anymore. So that comes then how you do reservations, how you put that in, because the truck driver will not wait, as you're saying, and how you allow sharing of the infrastructure, because on the other side, well, a structure which is only used for, I don't know, 15%, if we talk about megawatt charging, there's no business case on it.
Yeah, will hardly be profitable.
So we need to make it, and then it's a software problem.
Yes.
You integrate
smart software,
reservations into the back end, and allowing a driver to reserve at the point when he needs it.
Yeah, we already heard some examples of that yesterday.
So software in trucks, our thesis on the software aspect is that I always have to think about vertical integration long term in this industry, and where does it make most sense? Does it make sense for a hardware manufacturer to vertically integrate into the software stack up, or does it make sense potentially for a CPO to integrate into that software stack down? And I think that the most sophisticated CPOs are going to own most of their own software stack, the vast majority of it, including CPMS, including optimization of the different charging infrastructure on one or multiple of their sites and interaction with the grid utility. Yes. So I believe that's where the vertical integration will go. And so we've taken the approach of we're going to work with every single software platform, because we don't want to step on our customers' toes. On the truck side of things, where we've taken Tritium has taken an approach is, and we've seen this happening in the US market, there's going to be several players who can capture sites with grid connections, with available grid connections, and they're very lucky, and they're going to have a low cost of operations, but there are not many of those sites. And most of the sites have already been bought up, specifically by the private equity players. So you see in the US specifically Blackstone, Brookfield, BlackRock, and a few Ares and a few others that have bought up these large available sites on highway with grid infrastructure. Now what do we do with the rest of the sites? And so what we've pivoted towards is effectively DC microgrids. The ability to then feed a DC across an entire site, so AC grid connection coming in, sometimes a small grid connection, and then DC across the whole site, and feed in a battery system, also DC coupled. That's going to be a very important point, because the energy losses with an AC coupled system are too great for them to handle. So a DC coupled battery energy storage system, that's where we believe that truck charging is going to go, and how to meet these peaky demands.
Very good points. I would like to open up the discussion to the audience. So if you have any questions, please feel free to send them through the event app, or just raise your hand. So if there are any, there's a show of hand in the right at the back too. Maybe we can have some microphones over there.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, my name is Syed Hasib Hassan, and I'm a passionate EV driver, and I've been working at an EV charger manufacturer as well. So I had some questions around plug and charge. So I heard Markus saying that, okay, the industry is going towards plug and charge, why we are still talking about payment terminal with pin pad. And one thing I realized after working and also talking to normal people who are driving and also the people who are from the masses, not the early adopters, the plug-in charge is kind of on 3 layers. It's the EV, it's the EV charger, and then it's the backend. And all of them can be plug-in charge certified, but it does not mean that it will be working. For example, Skoda, for example, it was plug-in charge 2 years ago. It could only work on ICNC station, but it will only work if the person has a subscription of Volkswagen, for example. Such sort of complexities, I realized that plug-in charge were there. And the question I got the whole time from the masses, they were like, we want the easiest charging solutions. Make us easier for us. We would like to switch from gasoline if we can compare it to what we do in every day. For example, I do not have to think when I'm going to buy bananas, which app I have to use to get how much cheaper, or on the gas station. So this is the feedback from the masses I got, and I would like to hear, how do you see it? Do you really see that plug-in charge is going to come in a couple of years, or do you think that the way to make it easier right now is first let's go with the conventional tested trial version, which we all breathe every day with credit cards, and then going towards that? I just want to get feedback.
Thank you. So if there are more questions, you can already put up your hand so the microphone can find you. But who wants to comment on the plug-in charge?
Asking about my comment, I picked that comment on norms with the pin pad for purpose. It was not that I would not allow that we have alternative payment system on a charger. I mean, an app, a credit card, and in the future plug and charge probably, which is still not. If you go out there, it's still not developed, and there are also car brands which are not supporting it. So there's the whole ecosystem which has to be made ready for that. So I was not against that we have these alternative payment possibilities, and that's important. But I was specifically going on that pin pad thing and on debit cards probably in Germany, which is a little bit like a little bit more old-fashioned. But creating some complexity in addition if we invest in something which is not for the future made. I'm not against credit card terminals. That makes a lot of sense because it's easy. Everybody who's not connected to an app at the moment, he or she can use it. That makes a lot of sense. But there's some certain things in there, like for example the pin pad topic or debit card things, which are probably a little bit more old-fashioned and which we should not invest into. But I agree. I mean, for the mass market, probably the credit card terminal at the moment is the most important thing. Does it have to have an analog pin pad? Probably not.
I would like to, because we are running out of time, and I have 2 more questions. So if you don't mind, I'd like to pose those. So one is on the lifetime of the charger. So how do the manufacturers help the CPOs maintain the equipment reliability after warranty, considering the CPOs plan for 10 years with one hardware?
So Tritium has taken the approach, and
what's the approach?
What's the approach? So, and we have taken the approach of we design the technology around the power module. We manufacture the power module. It is our core intellectual property. We are the ones that know how to service it. We're the ones that know how to refurbish it if necessary. We're the ones that know how to upgrade it if necessary. We're going to take ownership of that power module for the life of the product. And we've introduced a lifetime power module warranty for our products, for our current generation and our next generation of products. And that, I think, is pretty unusual in the industry. And I'm probably going to get a little bit of heat from my colleagues here, but ultimately what I think that does is it sends a clear message to the market of there are 2 types of hardware manufacturers. One type is one that has designed and owns their power module, and one type is a hardware manufacturer that integrates using, in most cases, Chinese power modules. That is where a lot of them come from today. And if you integrate using a third-party power module, I just frankly believe you cannot own your own destiny. You cannot control the quality.
Yes.
They will change manufacturing processes on you. They will change components on you. And issues will occur that ultimately leads to downtime on the CPO side. And so if we're going to stand by our technology, we're going to be the ones to take the risk on that technology, and we're going to guarantee that for life. That's the most important part of the charger, and that's the part that now the customer no longer has to worry about it.
Yep.
Thanks for the good advertisement.
You're welcome.
Arcady.
We're here for a reason, you see.
So this is a one way to do it, that you take the responsibility and you kind of cover that with the money. Or the other way is that you build a very strong, reliable power electronics over the lifetime and longer than the CPOs expect. So our approach to go for the 15-year lifetime from the design point of view. So then it's 10 years, it should be easy.
Mm-hmm.
One last answer, and then we have to wrap it up.
You know, I agree that basically we need to have a trust from the market that actually we can build these power modules. I fully agree that owning the power module technology is a key differentiator moving forward, and we are heavily investing on this and have always been. And yes, in the bus world and in the truck world, you need to go beyond 10 years anyway. So actually there are different requirements. So I would also see that in the maturing now of this industry, that this problem will go away if partners are selected for the hardware that have more end-to-end control of their destiny.
Thanks so much. Max, please do. I don't want to leave you out. Yes.
I mean, I agree on the power module topic in general, but it's the core element, but it's one element. And what we have to do, I mean, we're guaranteeing, we have a certain period of guarantee, then we're offering some service level agreement. We have access to the equipment via backend to see how we can do preventive maintenance where we have to do something, because it's not only a power module which might fail, even if the power module is stable, you might have other elements in the charger, a screen, which is a user interface, which might fail. So you want to control that and help your customer with preventive maintenance with all of that.
Great. Thank you so much. I have to cut it here, but I know there are some more questions, so the speakers are going to walk down there, and please just feel free to get up and grab them and ask your questions in person. It's much nicer anyway. So thank you so much, guys, for a great panel.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you.